Good afternoon. I'm so glad you could join us here today. My name is Debbie Horovich, and this is another episode of SparkleSOS, Book Authors and Publishers. We are a monthly peer hangout where we get together with experienced and best-selling authors and a panel of aspiring and working book authors so that we can talk about the experience. So I'm really excited. We're here today with both myself as an aspiring author and other aspiring authors. We have some people in the audience who are going to be asking questions, and I want to encourage you to participate in the conversation, whether you are watching us live or if you're watching us later today or throughout the week. You can always use the Q&A app or go back to the Google Plus page and put questions there for any of us on the show, anyone in the community, and especially for Sally herself. And we do have some special gifts as well available to everyone who's watching. So we'll get into the conversation now, and just keep in mind, let us know if you have questions, if something that Sally says or any of the guests or even myself says that resonates with you, or that you're unsure of, that you kind of disagree with. This is an open conversation. We're all peers. We're all working towards becoming best-selling book authors, or the book authors that we imagine in our heads. So now what I'll do is I'll introduce, on our panel, we have Robin Mather. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Debbie. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm hoping that you can introduce yourself to our viewing audience and to Sally as well. Just tell us where you are in the world and where you are in your book authoring process, in your journey.
Oh, great. Yeah, great. I have to put it on the line. This is good because I'm going to say it out loud. Hi, Sally. Very, very nice to meet you as well. I'm a big fan of your work and your book, and excited to be a part of your launch process as well. I am on the East Coast, right outside Boston, Massachusetts, and I love the ability that Hangouts allows us to meet people from all over the world, which is great. It really brings the concept of community and village really small. And I am a social brand builder. I work with visionary leaders and mission-driven entrepreneurs to help them unveil their voice and build a much bigger, broader thought leadership platform online. So your work, Sally, is really right up my alley, and I'm looking forward to incorporating it into the work I do. And as far as being an aspiring author, I'm really at the beginning. I've thought about it for many years and know that I have something very important to say, yet the process of putting it down on paper and writing, which I don't feel is my strength, has really been in the way. So I love being able to get on one-on-one and learn about how you get over some of those blocks, because I know each and every one of us who you have created a book have been there. It's not an easy process, no matter how many people you have helping you, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to that, and of course the subject matter resonates big time with me. So I would say it's something that I want to do in the next 18 months, and the concept of that scares me because the amount of work I know I need to focus and do. So that's where I'm at with the book process.
Congratulations to you for doing it, for putting it out there and embarking on that process.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us and for putting it out there and taking the risk to make the commitment to yourself that you're going to move forward. You're going to stop just thinking about it and start taking action on it. Hi, Sally. I'm so glad we've waited so long to have this conversation today through numerous attempts. But I'm really glad that it's come together, and I have to say, it's rare with this show that I have so much audience interaction and so much engagement for the show for an author before they come on, and I think that really the personality assessment and what you've created, what you've discovered and written about in your book is really changing things for people. It's really revolutionary.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to diving in deep. I'm hoping today maybe you can help me understand my personality assessment, and help others as well with being a book author. and using
I would
your
love
content.
to. Yes. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I love being able to get questions. I love being an author. I love the whole process, and I've learned so much. And part of the problem with doing a really intense process that you're not necessarily going to repeat a whole bunch of times is that you learn all these lessons, and then the lessons die with you. And how wonderful that you've created a forum that we can be sharing these messages from other people, so that people told me invaluable lessons that dramatically changed the course of my writing and my career. So I look forward to sharing some of what I learned as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So tell us about your process for the book, and really what would you like to talk about today? What can you share with us?
Well, why don't I describe what the trajectory was like so that we can see that it doesn't start here. There are steps, and that my steps are not the same as other people's. When I started as an advertising copywriter, and I loved the process of writing the words for brands. I absolutely loved it. So my clients included Nike, Coca-Cola, Target, and it was my job to create the television commercials or the print ads, the taglines, and I loved that creative process of the words, and for me that felt very easy and effortless. It was a perfect match for my personality because I didn't have to write huge, long manuscripts. I just had to write the nugget, identifying that nugget. And I went through a very difficult time in my career. I was pregnant with my second baby, and I had to go on bed rest, and I had to quit my career as an advertising creative director. It was an incredibly painful time and concerning financially, professionally. And so while I was in bed, I was on total bed rest. Imagine I had here's my belly, and I had my computer, and I would just type, and I typed about what I had learned about careers and how to have a really entrepreneurial, taking control of your career so that you could be an entrepreneur even if you were not literally an entrepreneur. And right around the time that my daughter Azalea was born, I finished the manuscript, and that was my first book. It was named Radical Careering. Radical careering read very much like an advertisement. I mean, it was very sound bites, chunks, which is kind of how my brain works. And after Radical Careering came out, I decided that I wanted to do something more ambitious, more research oriented. And so I stopped doing my work as an advertising creative director. In other words, I left advertising, which was a huge commitment that I had to make financially, that I had to start turning down lucrative projects so that I could focus on my writing. And that was a major leap of faith with big, big implications. And I just knew that in order to be an author, I had to really have some quality time for my writing. And what came out of that was my next book, which was Fascinate. And Fascinate is all about the 7 different ways that brands communicate to fascinate their listeners, to attract more customers. And I loved this process, but still I felt like there was something missing. I wanted to focus on people. And it was about 4 years ago that I began working on this new concept for a book that was kind of like the love child. So imagine this one's about your career and how do you identify those parts of yourself that are your ultimate advantage. And this one was about brands. And I thought, well, what if I put them together? Then I would have a book that would be building upon branding, and it would be speaking to the individual, but it would be drawing upon the principles that I learned as an advertising creative director for world-class brands. When I help brands find those perfect words to describe themselves, I found that was a very effective use of my creativity. So I thought, what if I could do that for people, to help people find those perfect words to describe who they are at their best? So 4 years ago, Fascinate came out in 2010, and I came back to HarperCollins. I said, I think I'm ready for the next book, and I told them the concept, and they loved it. But it was a very complex idea because I wanted to draw upon research. I wanted to take all my work with companies, and so there was a huge commitment. And it took about 8 months to go through that negotiating process because we knew it was going to be a big undertaking. So that brings us up to about 2012. I'm just show you how long this project took. So I started writing, and originally I had seen the book more like Strengths Finder. And I oop.
Sorry about that.
My screen's getting all excited. I'm new to the technology. So I started capturing all of this, and I saw it as being a book that was more of a catalog of personalities that you could dip into understand your employees or your coworkers, your clients. But HarperCollins really wanted a narrative. So a narrative like storytelling, a personal side to it. So we created a book that parts 1 and part 3 are narrative, and the second part is all the reference material. And this is what it looked like when this is the very first one. Let me see, this is the very first one that I turned in. My manuscript looked like this. So I did the design. I did all the layout. My team and I worked incredibly hard on getting this ready. But it looked like this. And then this was the pre-galley, right before it was a galley, in other words, so it was like this. And then we went to the galley stage. Here's what my galley looks like. A galley is, in the pre-production version that it actually gets printed by the publisher. Look like that, but paperback. Mm-hmm. And then finally, this is what it looks like now. It's glossy, yummy as a mirror on the front, and so there was a huge investment on my part to make sure that it was done exactly the right way, because it was 4 years in production. And it was an incredibly brutal process. There are parts of it that makes me want to gouge my eyes out with a mechanical pencil. I absolutely hate the last stages of editing. I'm not good at it. It causes me misery. I wish I could hand it off, but I needed it to be in my own voice. And so what I'm eager to hear, what are the ways in which I can help you shortcut those parts that are painful and to make better decisions when it comes to a publisher, PR, writing process, distribution, selling it through. I feel like I've kind of been there through it all, and I don't know that my way is right for everybody, but I definitely made some choices that taught me a lot all throughout the process.
Awesome. Robin, did you want to jump in and ask a question right off the bat?
Well, I can tell you from listening to you and following along as my visual mind of this 4-year process right there, and that is a huge undertaking. So you clearly had a mission, you had a passion to get something done, and you knew it was going to take that long, because there's a lot of research in here. There's no way you can just
it's not a typical book.
Story. Exactly. So that right there is like, I'm breathing through that, because again, breathing through that. What you said is, I agree with you. I'm listening to you, and everything you said is resonating. So even though we may not go through the same process you did, you're already making me see, and I've already learned a number of things. The whole concept of writing in sound bites and chunks, that's how I write, that's how I think. I think that's why the process of writing a book doesn't resonate with me unless I had somebody to write the words, but then how do you keep it in your own voice? The editing process becomes so important. So I do see that you've already said, oh, I can put down sound bites and chunks and have a really, really well rough draft and then bring somebody else in to fill it in and make it sound like a story or whatever needs to be done, because that's the piece I'm not good at. I'm not good at that either. So you've helped me see that that's just not me. It shouldn't keep me from writing a book. And yes, the concept of a publisher, I look at who published your book, and yeah, it's a little scary to think, you've already written a couple, but how do you get on their list? Or is there other options that you didn't do that you could suggest other people do, like self-publishing in the beginning? So there's so many things out there. Giving somebody some idea of a path is good, leaving wiggle room for them to say, that doesn't work, so I go here or I go there. But you've already helped me realize that I don't need to be what I sense a great writer. I already can speak it if somebody else can write it.
There's so many ways to write a book. There's not one right way to have a book ultimately turn out. And it's important for you not to sign up to write a book that isn't one that you ultimately want to write. In other words, format your book however you want. If you think in lists or you think in bullet points, write the book around that so that you can feel a creative flow when you're writing, and that it feels like an accurate representation of who you are. Because here's the deal in writing a book. Whatever book you write, it's going to be an unbelievable labor of love. It's incredibly difficult, but it's so worth it, because the effort goes like this, but then you have it for the rest of your life. It becomes the ultimate calling card. You'll get booked more. You'll be able to have a platform to be able to talk. You'll have content in one place that you can reference. It helps you sell other products and services. I mean, the long tail of the benefit that comes is incredibly long. But make sure you don't write a book that isn't one that you want to live with in your bed for a decade, because the book,
Right.
it's kind of like, so when I wrote Radical Careering, I love radical careering, but the problem is that then it lived in the career section of the bookstore, and you don't go to the career section of the bookstore if you love your career. You go to the career section of the bookstore if you hate your career. So then I'm talking to all these people who like hate their work. How not fun is that? So then I would, like, Career Builder hired me to be a spokesperson. So then I'm going to these events for people who hate their work, and that's not fun. I want to talk to high performers. I want to.
Oh, that's really spot on, Sally.
Yes, I think about
something
who do you want to talk
about. Yeah.
And the other thing is, a book is such a, there's such a time investment that you want to make sure, project your career 5 years, 10 years in the future. You don't necessarily know where you're going to live or what your job description is going to be or who you're going to work for or not. But you can know what you are so passionate about that you can't imagine not wanting to talk about it. And I got tired of talking about careers really quickly. I never got tired of talking about how to be fascinating and how to find the science behind your communication patterns. And I don't think I ever will. Like, I'm totally geeked out about it. My kids and I sit there and talk about it at dinner on Saturday night. And you have to find a topic that you feel that inspired by, that isn't just a checklist that you want on your resume.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. That's very, very important. Thank you.
I would tend to agree with that as well, because it is such a big commitment that it would be sad to spend a year or to overlook other opportunities in your life that come to you while you're working on writing a book that at the end you're not really satisfied with. And I don't know if that is sometimes that people, like I frequently come in contact with book authors who have published their book, but they're not satisfied with it. They think it needs more editing. They self-published and printed originally, and they feel stuck with the concrete produced version, rather than opening themselves up really to the possibility, which is you can always republish, and you can constantly improve your book.
And there's so many options of ways to get content out there. A disadvantage of working with a traditional publisher is that you get that first print run, and you pretty much are locked into it, because they're not going to. They'll keep printing it, but they're not going to give you a second edition. We're doing the second edition of Fascinate, but that's 4 years later. So when you're self-publishing or independent publishing, you have total control over what the subsequent rounds look like. You can do it on demand, and you can almost think of that first run, the first print run, like a focus group. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to do it on expensive paper. You don't have to do a big print run. Just know that you're going to do it kind of print 100 for friends and family. I would have loved to have a sample print run. Like, there are typos in the book.
I haven't found any yet, but
okay, good.
but I do. Yeah, I think that there's, and from what I've heard from some of the other authors who have joined us on the show, is that there's the traditional publishers really in this day and age, what they're now this year even publishing fewer and fewer titles every year. They're taking fewer risks with the authors that they agree to publish, what's some of the other authors, like Mike Michalowicz, a few weeks ago, what he really drove home was the idea that he has been both self-published and traditionally published, and then his most recent book, his publisher wasn't interested. They felt that it was too niche, that no one wanted to read a book about accounting. Mm. And so his whole position at the moment is that really traditional publishers, they're looking for the sure thing. So there's nothing wrong with, if you're confident and sure and secure in your message, in your idea. It doesn't have to be perfectly published. You publish the best that you can. But if you can prove the concept of your book, if you can prove that people are interested in reading it, then there's no reason why a publisher wouldn't come in and buy the rights to publish it in their way for their audience, because you've already proven the concept.
I was just in Las Vegas shooting for online training with David Horsager, who wrote The Trust Edge. And you may be familiar with his story. Maybe you've talked to him before. But his book was originally self-published, and it did very well. And so Simon & Schuster came in and purchased the rights, and it was the biggest non-celebrity advance of 2000. I think it was 2013, and at Barnes and Noble, it was their biggest launch of the year. So being able to have a proven entity makes it that much more attractive, especially if you don't have a big platform right now. In other words, you don't have a zillion Twitter followers and people who are subscribed to your newsletter. It allows you to take incremental steps.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it allows you to build up your platforms. Having, like you said, having a book opens up so many new opportunities to you. It becomes a point of distinction, I think, for many people, and maybe less so now that self-publishing is so available to so many people. But I almost think it's even more of a point of distinction, because who am I? I'm still a nobody. But I can be a book author. I can go into a pitch with a potential client and just have a conversation with them about what I can see and what I think I can contribute to them, and I can leave them with my book. And whether or not they hire me immediately, I'm probably the only one who's come in and left them with a copy of my book. And eventually, they'll always come back to me, because I was the only one who left them with my book. I was the only one who has a book.
A book's a great way to be able to distinguish yourself, because if you think about, there's only so much of you to go around, and you can't be in the room with the client when they're making their decision. A lot of times there'll be a committee, and they really want tangible proof. And if somebody's going to buy into you, whether it's as an author or as a speaker, as a consultant, as a full-time employee, whatever it is that you want to do, somebody has to put their butt on the line to endorse you over other people. And one of the best ways to establish that credibility is to be able to say, if you want to know who I am and what I believe, if you want to see who I am at my best, just go here. And even though our meeting may only be 15 minutes, 30 minutes long, then if they want to learn more, this can be the differentiating factor. And that's what's so beautiful about a book, and that you want to make sure that your book is representative of who you are at your best. That if your style is very informal, and you would show up in khakis and a button down with no tie, then it's okay for you to have really informal printing or papers that aren't glossy. But if your style is highly stylized and you are absolutely impeccable, then it's worth it to spend the extra money, because you can think of your book like your emissary. Your book is going out, marching into the world on your behalf, so that you don't have to be in the room, and it helps you become more scalable. And I also like to be able to we have a joke in my house, we call it peeing on the tree. We'd like to pee on the tree of intellectual property, that we want to be able to have areas that belong to us. And that's why I chose the word fascination, is because nobody had ever really claimed that word before. And so when you're thinking about your title, first of all, make sure it's Google friendly. You don't want a title that's like the result solution. It's just not going to, find a title that will allow you to stand out for the title, so that when somebody's typing it into Amazon, it doesn't complete with a zillion other offerings. Like if you go to Amazon and you type in it'll finish, world sees you, because it's a really unusual type of phrase, and fascinate was the same thing. So you want to choose language that is strongly differentiating. And you also want to make sure that the experience of reading your book is the same as the experience of you at your best. So when you're talking to somebody, say you're a consultant and you're talking to a client, if the experience that client is having is, wow, this person, meaning you, is so thoroughly fine-tuned in their research, and I feel incredibly impressed that everything I need is right here. This is extremely practical and useful. It helps me make a decision. Then you and your book should have congruity. When I was doing the research for How the World Sees You, I was tempted to leave out personal stories and to leave out little jokes and funny references, and I realized that I needed to make a commitment that every think of it like telephone poles. Every 10 pages, I wanted to be able to have something that would make the reader kind of give them some candy, so that I would do because I researched at 300,000 people, and so getting all that research in there was intense. And so it's like fact, 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 and then I'm going to tell you a really cool story. It's going to seem like a non sequitur at first, but it's going to bring you in. Like, you know, when I'm describing, here's what high performers at AT&T do, then I'm going to tell you a story about how vanilla ice cream sells differently than pistachio ice cream. Vanilla ice cream is a crowd pleaser, but if you're the vanilla in your category, you have to have the biggest budget in order to break through. Whereas if you're the pistachio, you don't have to have a big budget. You don't have to be the most famous, because you have such a distinctive flavor, you're naturally going to attract the right kind of customers or readers. So it's little stories like that whoever you are at your best, however your personality communicates, you have to make sure that's infused in the book.
Well, that was a good segue, because because how you got to know your personality, and it needs to be in the book. So I loved that story about pistachio and vanilla, by the way. That was something I did read. So because it's so true. It's how you're saying you don't have to appeal to everybody unless your budget and everything about you can compete on that vanilla stage or that pathway, and that you can be just as successful, if not more, appealing to a smaller group who loves pistachio. I love that. Love it, love it. I know one thing I wanted to say as you were talking, I wrote down, and even if you don't talk about it now, because that was a perfect segue into talking about how book authors can use your fascination assessments to actually help them add themselves into the book better. I wanted to also touch upon, you've written a couple other books, you've built a tribe, and when I think about promotion, and you know, I've been a part of your promotion of this book, I was not a part of the other two, but what I have seen it really shows me the testament to having a tribe of people that help grow this with you. And I think that what you're doing is awesome. You know, I don't know if I can tell the fact that you've spread, you know, to 50,000 people in 2 months. And I think that's got to be something very, as far as people taking the test and learning about their personality and how the world sees them. I think that's awesome, incredible, and you've got to be really proud about that.
Thank you. Yeah, we the assessment that was the basis of the book is it's $37 a person, and I had a crazy idea right before the book launch. I said, if the book's doing well, what if we just gave it away? Lower the barriers to content. It was very counterintuitive, but from a marketing perspective, this was my thinking. If we're only getting, if your book is only getting buyers that already know you, that's very limited. But if you could get the people in your world who already know you to introduce you to other people, then it becomes, you know, exponential. And so we launched something called Project Fascination, which you can check out at projectfascination.com. And we literally came up with the idea on a Friday, and it was launched on Monday, and we created a way for people to log on and immediately get a free code that they could then share with 100 people. And the only thing we asked is that your purpose in doing Project Fascination is not just because you're using a free code, it's because you want to spread a message that each person has unique value, and that when you identify somebody's highest value, they give more of it into the world. So you had to pay it forward. And the first couple of days, we had like 50 people. And then we had about 100 people, and I was like, wait, you guys, hold on. We haven't hit the tipping point yet. Give it a little bit of time. And I came in over the weekend. We have a little leaderboard here. 5,000 people. So over the last few days, 5,000 people have done it. And wow. So when you find something in your content, instead of thinking about how can you charge more for this or how do you create a barrier for this, find selective ways that you can make it free or make it so attractive and sticky that people want to share it for you. And the more that you can take your content and find bite-sized ways, whether it's shareables on Twitter or fabulous quotes and tips that you're sharing on Facebook, your goal is not just to talk to your readers, it's to have your readers talk to their community, and that's how you create the ripple effect.
Awesome.
Wow, there's just so much in there. I absolutely love the idea of the writing the book and producing the book is not it's not a one event in your life. It's not something that you just do and then leave. It's something that once you have taken the time to create the content within the book, now for the next couple of however long that you're promoting the book, or for the next couple of years or at least months, you have so much content pre-created that just needs to be repurposed slightly into tweets, into blog posts, and into various channels so that everyone in the world can look at it and go, is this right for me? Do I need to lean in and look at this more closely and get to know Sally and her content and all of her books even better?
When you're doing the process of creating the book, there are certain stages that are going to feel really easy and fun, like the initial creative brainstorming of saying, what could this book be, is really easy for me, and then the detailed proofreading and editing is excruciating, even though I had a professional proofreader. You know, HarperCollins had a whole team, but ultimately the author has to be the one who's really doing it, because you don't want somebody changing your words. And so what I recommend is find those places in the process that for you, where you can add huge value and really make a big difference, when you can make huge strides, and then try to replicate that during the book promotion and the book launch. Because so for me, that was not highly detailed reporting to my publisher. For me, that was working with my team on finding what are new ways, what are other ways that we could be not only promoting the book but spreading the message. And we referred to it as a pivot, because people told us, oh, as soon as the book comes out, is about to come out, all you have to do is email your list and you'll be done. And we did that, and we sold like 200 books, which was so far from our goal that I had to go and be totally depressed all week. I'm like, well, crap, what do we do now? And so it came in on Monday. And I was like, okay, we just got to come up with a new way of doing this. And what we decided to do was we decided that we weren't just going to do one way of promoting the book. We were going to talk differently to different personalities based on their advantages. And so we created highly, highly customized content that would go to different people based on different reasons why people would want to buy the book. For example, people who are highly detailed want to read this book because it has all this research behind it, and it's super step by step. There's something very linear and methodical about. You don't have to be creative to get something out of this. You just use the words I already built. On the other hand, really creative personalities don't want detail. They want to show me a new way to be myself and give me these new out-of-the-box opportunities. So I shouldn't sell to those same people the same way. But if we hadn't gone through the launch and I hadn't tapped into how I wrote the book itself, it wouldn't have gone that way. And that's what I recommend for all authors. Find that sweet spot, that a way of communicating with not only with your tribe, with your publisher, but kind of you got to protect your book like a mama bear, because there can be so many forces that come in that make you want to compromise. And there might be times when you have to have expensive choices where somebody's going to say, you know, let's just dumb down the cover a little bit and do something and you look at it and you're like, this is butt ugly. I don't want my book looking like this. You know, like think of your book as think of the thumbnail that you're going to have on Amazon. It's almost like your logo. So there's certain points where you have to really prioritize and put your fullest self, fall on a sword for it. And then there are other places where you just got to let it go, so that because you can't be great at everything, but you have to be extraordinary at something.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, where I am in the process, I started this show, SparkleSOS Book Authors and Publishers, 18 months ago, knowing that I wanted the experience and the benefits of my life of being a book author, and I knew that I have a lot that I think differently, that I have different experiences. I know that I have an important message to share, but I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to focus on, and I was really, really insecure. I'd shared it with some people in my family, and they had said, don't bother writing a book. It won't make you happy. They had gone through the process, and it didn't give them any happiness, and so I was really strongly discouraged from doing it. And it crushed me. It crushed me, and I put it aside. I put those dreams aside for a couple of years, and then I started this show with the knowledge that if I just spent time mentoring with successful book authors, that my thinking about it would change. And what's happened is that I discovered so much. I became so passionate about connecting with experienced and successful book authors through my show, and that I discovered, wait, I'm doing something really, really different and unique in my industry, in social media, with Google Plus Hangouts on Air, and nobody's really looking at Google Plus Hangouts on Air and how they can connect you, someone who, like for me, I was a nobody when I started the show. I'm still pretty much a nobody. But I have the opportunity to have, now I've got at least a half dozen best-selling book authors that are my friends. That lend me their political and social capital on the social channels, confirming our friendship because we've connected through Hangouts on Air. And so what I did was I actually developed a full training program, and I called my program for Hangouts on Air, Celebrity Hangouts on Air. And that is also the title of my book. I've created my whole online training program, and when I did that last summer, I outlined the entire online training program as a 6-part process that people go through in planning their Hangouts. And I stepped back from my giant Post-it note. You can see behind me, I use giant Post-it notes for just about everything.
Yay! I know that chart.
Yeah, I put your charts up. When I stepped back from that giant Post-it note that was outlining what I thought was just going to be my website and my process for my training program, I looked back at it and I went, oh my God, this is the outline of my book.
Oh.
And then I went through the process of actually creating the content of my training program and launching that, and now it's like, okay, my book, like all of my content for my book, now I just need to put it in words. Now I just need to decide, I just need to get over my ego and get to the publishers and hear them say we're not interested or we are interested, and I need to keep on moving forward with what they give me to work with. And so I'm wondering if you can provide some insights, maybe, I mean, because the whole idea that my personality advantage being I'm the victor, which is I was kind of surprised by it. I'm a little bit surprised by it, but not hugely surprised. I'm wondering if you can tell me how do I position it? I still feel a little bit lost. It says I'm respected, but do I tell people I'm respected? I don't feel respected. I feel like a lot of people don't see what's really special about me. I would love to have a job as a CEO. I would kick ass as a CEO. But people don't trust me, which is my dormant personality, to be able to provide me with those types of leadership roles.
You are going to be your most successful when you can communicate to a publisher, to a client, to a potential author that you are results-oriented. Remember, the victor, think of a victor sees goals really clearly. And so when you took the personality assessment, the Fascination advantage, you discovered that your primary advantage is prestige, which is all about elevating goals, pushing to the next level, not being satisfied. Prestige is the language of excellence. So you don't put your name on something unless it's truly excellent. And anybody who's part of your community knows that that's true. And when you see the world, when you look outward, you naturally see how can you improve. And so when people are looking at you, when they're seeing you at your best, you're highly aspirational, and you're seeing where can we go next. You're not satisfied with the status quo. Your secondary advantage is power. Power is about authority. You are an expert. You've made yourself an expert by building and growing and organically expanding and acquiring the knowledge and the skills and the reputation to become results-oriented, respected, competitive. When you look in your inside of your report, I'm holding up your report here, there are 5 adjectives here that describe you. Respected, competitive, results-oriented, concentrated, and exemplary. That means those situations that allow you to be that are the ones in which you're going to feel most applied, most focused, and say if you walk into a meeting with a publisher, you want to make sure that they know your credentials. You want to make sure that they know just how high you're planning on going with the book. If you have certain standards in terms of how it's published, how it's written, how it's edited, you want to make that clear right up front. And so for you, if you think of it, you're always looking, Debbie, at 1, 2, 3, 4. And so when the publisher works with you, the reason why that you're going to add value beyond your content, so it's not just about your manuscript, it's not just about your platform and your words, that it's really about you as an author, that you're going to be able to bring this goal orientation, this sense of competition. You know, you're probably going to say to them, what are my book sales? How did we do this week? What did we do last week? What else can we do?
Well, so I'll be sending them my book sales and saying, look at how many books I sold last week. How many did you sell?
So you want to make sure that that comes through loud and clear. So when you write your book proposal for an agent or for a publisher, you don't just want it to be about the concept of the content. You want to make sure that it's also about, and here's what I'm going to do, because really that's what a publisher is looking for. They're not just looking for the book. Somebody once told me, I think it's a handy rule of thumb, first thing they look at is the title. Second thing they look at is your table of contents to kind of skim it and see, what is this book about? Is this a topic that's relevant to me as a publisher or an editor? But the third thing they look at is your platform. So when you're writing your proposal, it's crucial for you to be able to say, I have access to these people, or these people will endorse me. These people will endorse the content. I have this many Twitter followers, this clout score. For me, one of the things that was really crucial in communicating my credibility was that I have the opportunity to get in front of very high-end audiences through my speaking. And that was really attractive to my publisher, because that means instead of me just having to talk on Twitter, that I would be able to hold my book up on stage in front of thousands of people. Now, for everybody who's listening, you don't realize how many ways that you can create influence and create response in your community. And it could be by, if you're writing a book that would be good in schools, then before you go to the publisher, you might get a written endorsement from 3 different superintendents or 3 different chairs of English departments that have already said, this is a book that I would be interested in having in my school, and then I think my peers would be interested in having in their schools. So that you can take that to the publisher as ammunition, as reinforcement that there's going to be appetite in the market. And the more that you can substantiate that, the better. So when I sold my first book, I sold it to Penguin. I'd never been a published author, and just because I was good at advertising doesn't mean that I'm. Just because you're a swimmer doesn't mean you're a gymnast. You know, it doesn't just translate. So I had to start from the very bottom. I had to get I had to write the proposal, but one of the things that I did, because of my competitive advantage of being creative, I made sure that I had a really, really creative proposal, and I showed them what the PR materials were going to look like, and I showed them that I was going to create postcards that I was going to mail out to everybody. I literally created them and showed them so that they could envision it, to make it really easy for them to see how successful this book was going to be. So I wasn't just handing them a manuscript. When I sold Fascinate to my to HarperCollins, Fascinate describes that the average attention span used to be 20 minutes long, and that today it might only be 9 seconds, the same as a goldfish. When I delivered the manuscript, I had a live goldfish in a bowl, sent with the manuscript with a ribbon tied around it, and it was dropped off at the publisher's office. So I mean, it was a fun way to be able to make my point, to say, hopefully you'll have more of an attention span than a goldfish for my manuscript. You don't have to do stuff like that, but that's how I think and communicate. And so for you, you'll have ways that are appropriate for you, that you should make sure that you carry that all the way through.
What I'm hearing from you is that you're saying, rather than knowing what my advantages are and talking about them, I really need to express that. I really need to allow myself to be and to behave in the space where I feel most empowered, where I feel most like I'm on my right path.
Can I show you an example?
Please.
Okay. Yeah. So here's the matrix.
Yeah.
And
I'm leaning in my chair trying to get your camera to move a little bit. You are going to be, this is where you're going to feel most fulfilled. Yeah.
You're not going to feel most fulfilled here. You are not going to feel most fulfilled here. You're not going to be most productive here. You're not going to be most likely to make a good impression here. Your sweet spot is right there. So if you can focus all of your communication on your archetype, then it takes options off the table. You know, part of being effective is not just being a great author, it's not just what you put in the book, it's what you edit from the book. Yeah. And the editing part is crucial. Well, in the same way with your personality, you can't just throw everything in. You have to edit. And so the more skillfully you can take things out and figure out who you're not, so you can stop trying to be that, then the more effectively you can say, here's who I am.
Okay. I'm not sure if I even showed that on the main camera. I forgot about my camera controls for a second there. I was so fascinated listening to you that I forgot about running the Hangout. So I understand. I know that I feel strong when I'm in that space. And certainly the personality assessment, I think, is bang on for me. It really does. I can see how trust is not necessarily congruent with everything else that I really want to achieve. And I have really big, unusual ideas for the world that I can see very clearly my path to achieving them, and I can see who I need to bring with me in order to achieve it. What I find challenging is that I get so many people. I'm not quite sure where it is that the world sees me.
As in regards to trust advantage?
Well, for all of them, I don't necessarily get the sense that the world sees me as this, but I am this.
Well, the world sees you as that when you're at your best.
Right.
So when you're playing your A game, when you are totally in your zone. You know those times when you're communicating, you're leading a meeting, you're having a business conversation, and the words are just coming, and it feels completely effortless, and you are making your absolute best possible impression on your listener. In those moments, they're far more likely to listen to you and buy from you and believe you and like you. Well, for you as the victor, you are at your best when you can be focused and goal-oriented and confident. That's different than me. I'm a catalyst, and catalysts like to be able to create connection. So we tend to be very playful, but we're not as goal-oriented. Oftentimes a catalyst likes to be able to create creativity and ideas. We like to be able to put ideas all over the wall, but we don't necessarily know how to follow through on those ideas. And so that's why when a catalyst and a victor work together, I would be saying, hey, Debbie, we could do this. And you would say, which one are we actually going to do?
Let's figure out the path to choose one and do it.
Can I interject? Because what I'm hearing, listening to Debbie and your answer, Sally, I have a feeling that, Debbie, I think you're missing or mixing up what the dormant trust advantage means. It doesn't mean that people don't trust you. It means that if you're not at your best, if you have to have a whole bunch of stuff to make people trust you as part of your communication process, that's what doesn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Sally, but that's how I interpreted it for myself, because I'm a catalyst with a dormant trust.
Me too.
Oh, you're kidding me. Well, it made total sense to me that if I had to get up there and communicate with facts and figures and data sheets and spreadsheets, then that's not my best. I communicate with passion and innovation, and I know that, and enthusiasm, and I'm able to get people to see my point of view. That's my best. But if I had to, that's why I never resonated in corporate America, in a position where I had to give reports, detailed reports all the time. I failed. Because can't you just trust my word? No, they want to see it in documentation, and it didn't work for me. So I don't know if that helps, Debbie, but what I was hearing is that you were feeling that people don't trust you. I don't think that's the case. I think they trust you, but you may be trying to communicate in a way that's not at your best.
Your dormant advantage is the most exhausting way for you to communicate. Imagine you can either communicate as a victor, or you communicate as being very consistent, highly patterned, totally reliable, never altering, doing the exact same thing over and over again. Which one is going to give you the greatest likelihood of succeeding?
I couldn't do the second one.
Right. It would be so tiring for you. You could do it for a while, but then you'd get burned out, you'd be demoralized. Your dormant advantage is the way that feels like a burden for you to communicate with. So you have to be careful to avoid situations where people are expecting you to be that way.
Yeah.
I think that's why I did choose not to focus on financial institutions as clients, because I found that was, like, as you said, the quicksand. I was always running uphill to try and give them what they needed to allow me to do the work I wanted to do.
Right. Yeah, let me get this out of the way so I can start doing what I really want to do. And people need to know that that's what they really want you to do.
That's what they wanted.
So it helps us understanding our personality advantage, understanding where we operate at our best and our highest, helps us identify the situations and the relationships and the opportunities where we can succeed with the least amount of resistance.
And throughout the whole process, I mean, writing a book is going to be a major gestational period that you should be aware. If you really are not going to want to do book signings because you have a dormant passion advantage, if you really don't want to have to be flying to New York, don't go with a New York publisher. If you find those things that are truly exhausting and demoralizing for you, and then build the process that works for you, because you don't want to subtract energy from the book and have to put it in places that feel like quicksand.
Absolutely. Sally, have you, one of the people who started to really bring this sort of idea into my head, initially when I was first transitioning away from my advertising career, I spent 16 years as an ad agency media planner and buyer, so I love research and numbers and all of that sort of stuff. I just don't know if it really fulfills me. And I always felt sort of like placed in the box and not really able to explode the way that I wanted to in my career. Absolutely not a copywriter, but I wanted to make changes within the media department. I wanted to make changes with the millions of dollars that I was spending and the way that my clients were thinking. And one of the first people that really started to make me think about changing your situations to fit you so that you feel more fulfilled and it's easier for you to find that path to success was Marcus Buckingham.
Yeah, now discovered your friends.
Have you how do you think that your book and what he talks about relates?
Well, Marcus actually had very nice words on the back of Radical Careering for that original book. StrengthsFinder is about how you see the world, and it's based on psychology. It's based on understanding how you see other people. This is based on branding, so it's the reverse. It's a totally different perspective of how the world sees you. StrengthsFinder does a great job of describing strengths. I propose that as the market becomes more competitive, more distracted, strengths become a commodity. It's really hard to focus on your strengths without getting into that hamster wheel of trying to outdo other people. Instead, I suggest we focus on our differences. Don't try to be a better writer or a better salesperson. Instead, focus on how are you different. Because being different in a crowded market, it's much easier to stand out as an author if you're different than if you're better. Because you're not going to be better than the people who are already paying to keep the lights on inside the publisher's house. But you can be different, especially at the beginning. And the more different that you can be and the more that you can own those differences, the easier it's going to be for you to be able to carve out a specific way that you talk. So think about what are those patterns within your communication, within your writing, your speaking, the ways in which you take your idea and get it out to the world in whatever medium that is, and then do that on purpose so that that's being baked into not only your book concept, but how you sell that book.
Yes, Sally, I do feel that that's the little bit, not a hurdle for you, is that everybody has been preconditioned with the PMAI test, the what's the one that you get your little numbers? Myers-Briggs.
MBTI.
StrengthsFinder. All of these are about how you see the world. So you're flipping it, and it does set a little bit of confusion for people because naturally they want to compare. And you can't really compare. There may be correlations, but this is resonating with me. All the other stuff is great, but it just kind of said, yeah, this is me. I know who I am. But to actually flip it and say, well, how does the world see me so then I can communicate where they're going to hear me? And then, therefore, I feel more successful. I feel more spot on. I'm more in the flow, as you say. And I feel like I'm really doing something big in the world. So that's where I feel more people need to understand, really get, that this is about how the world sees you. Your title's there, but they don't get it. Because I've talked to several people.
It's a very different way of thinking about ourselves. That's why there's a mirror on the cover of the book.
I love that. I never picked that up.
Yeah, the mirror is reflecting how the world sees you at your best. So it's a new way that you can see yourself. And it's important when you're creating a book to differentiate it from your competitors. But make no mistake, I mean, we looked very, very closely at how StrengthsFinder publishes their book, how they produce their book. In the back of my book, we have there's a code that you scratch off, and that's how you get your code to take the assessment. Well, we got that idea from StrengthsFinder. But it's good to be looking at who are the winners in your marketplace and to show that to your publisher or show that to your customers because it gives them a common reference point, but then twist it in some way so that you can be adding something to the conversation they can't get anywhere else, which in this case is a system that's based on marketing, so it shows you exactly how to apply the words that we've been talking about into your LinkedIn profile and into your marketing.
My brain continues to explode. Sorry,
lose you guys.
Hello? Oh, I still see you, Sally.
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I can hear you now.
Yeah. Okay. I guess we sometimes the broadcast breaks up a little bit. Google Plus isn't always perfect technology, but
yes, Sally, you kind of broke up there for a few minutes. So if you want to repeat your thought that you were in.
Sure. Yeah, the thought was it's great to be able to look at who's doing really, really well in your category, whether it's mystery or science fiction or like me, business, whatever your category is, see who's doing it really, really well and what can you learn from them, but then offer a twist so you can make sure you're delivering something different. Like in my case, what I'm delivering is marketing, the exact marketing words to describe yourself on LinkedIn or in your Twitter bio or your website. And so it's important to see what do you want to copy and where do you want to be absolutely different.
I'm taking notes. I think it's really, really interesting because I find a lot of what you're saying is, for me, it's been reflected in what I've discovered is the key advantages to having a successful Google Plus Hangout on Air show is really understanding that you want to create a conversation, you want to bring people into that conversation on your Hangout on Air show, people who are actively having that conversation already, but you want to focus your conversation, your show, on what you when you're out in the trade media, when you're watching your trade TV and newspapers and magazines, the conversations that you read them, you see them, you participate, and you think, why is nobody talking about this? We really need to talk about this. That when I'm talking to the people who are coming to me and saying that they want to start a Hangout on Air show, it's really key in getting your content to the front of the line, to getting your content to the front of the right people's attention, to differentiate yourself and to say, we're having a conversation that is going to push forward the cause that we're all working on, but the conversation is going to be slightly different over here.
Right.
Debbie and Sally, just to let you know what you were just saying, Debbie, there is a gentleman who's watching us right now, Lee Rickler, and he wrote on the event page a question, and he didn't use the Q&A app, so I just wanted to let you know. He asks, what does it matter how people view us? I look at doing the right thing. Whatever this is will make some people love me, some hate. You can't please everyone, so just do your best and keep yourself happy. But what does it matter? I mean, Sally, how would you address them? Debbie, you did a little bit just now, but why should he care?
And what's his name?
Lee.
Lee
Rickler. Yeah, Lee.
Lee, imagine that you think you are funny, and in your mind, you're hilarious, and so you keep telling jokes all the time, but the problem is nobody else thinks you're funny. Well, that would be a problem, because if you think you're funny but nobody else thinks you're funny, then you're not funny. if you think you're effective, but nobody else thinks you're effective, you're not effective. If you think that you're charming or a great leader or a crucial part of a team, but nobody else thinks that, then you're not. And so we live in a world in which we have to understand other people's perceptions of us so that we can understand which parts of ourselves do we want to be giving to add value constantly. You shouldn't change who you are. You should become more of who you are. But you definitely have to know which parts of your personality help you add value so that you can contribute. Because it doesn't matter if you have the best idea if nobody notices or cares. It doesn't matter if you write the best book if nobody reads it. It doesn't matter if you manufacture the best cars if nobody buys it. We live in a world in which people's perception of you is going to be a key driver of your success. It's not the only driver, but it's a huge part of it. I hope that helps.
Awesome. You're still going to get people pissed off if they're not going to like you, but being yourself, it's good to know how people view you. Yes.
And I think for a lot of it, it comes back to, you know, there is, for me, it's my background in advertising as a media buyer. Even if I had $25 million to spend that year, $25 million doesn't go very far. And we still had to make really specific decisions for every single campaign. We had to make sure that the media channel I was buying was going to reach the very specific people that the ads that the creative department were speaking to. And if I chose the wrong media, it didn't matter how great the ad was. No one was going to resonate with the message. And
the same is true of a book.
What's that?
The same is true of a book. If you write a book that nobody wants to read, well, then you've got a beautiful thing to put on the shelf and collect dust, but it's not going to it's not going to make a difference in the world. You're the guardian of your message. So you have to be the advocate for your own message. And if you can't communicate clearly and in a way that people want to pay attention to and take action on, then your message fails. So if you have a message that matters, then you have a responsibility to make sure it gets out there. Fantastic.
I agree with you 100%. I'm looking forward so much to getting in more deep and really, I intend to follow up with you, Sally. I hope you won't be annoyed, but I'm going to show you exactly the results that I'm achieving. I'm going to step into being the victor and demonstrate to you and to the world my personality advantages. Yes, my victorness. There is one question. Thank you for reminding me, Robin, about the Q&A app. We do have a question that came in on the app. Chandra Higgins. She says, it's hard for me to answer self-evaluations because I realize how I see or know myself may be totally different than how others see me. So she's looking forward to being, she wrote convicted, but I think she meant maybe convinced.
Convinced, hopefully. Hopefully not convicted. A traditional personality assessment is simply measuring through your eyes out, and this research is different. The research is based on, from my branding background, I knew that certain types of signals create a certain response in the listener, in the customer, in the consumer. And so the assessment is measuring the signals or cues that you're intentionally or unintentionally sending out, because we already have the data on how people respond to that. So if Coca-Cola writes a television commercial that communicates with passion or communicates with power, the research already tells us how people are going to respond to that. So that's why this is a self-evaluation, but it's really not a self-evaluation. The algorithm is calculating all the different questions in slightly different weighted ways, and the assessment used to be 153 questions, took 35 minutes, and now it's only 28 questions and it takes 3 minutes.
Wow.
I do have one last question for you, Sally, really about that assessment. And you've done so much more than just writing and publishing a book. How much, to me, the idea of creating something like that assessment, I was thinking last night, wouldn't it be great if I could create some sort of gamified assessment that would help people understand the best Hangout on air that they could produce for themselves? But of course I have these big ideas, and very often I'm more ambitious and more positive about what I can really create than what I have as available resources. And so I'm wondering how much really was it, like it seems to me like a huge undertaking just to create the whole online infrastructure of that test.
Well, remember a moment ago, Lee was asking the question about why does it matter how the world sees me? Well, do you remember that? Like, why should I care? Shouldn't I just do what I think is right? And some people will like it, some people won't. Well, here's where that comes into play. You could do an online test, you could write a book, you could give speeches, you could be a consultant, you could do all these things, but which one is going to give you value and allow you to contribute value, and which one is going to get the most success in the marketplace? So we did all different kinds of programs, but what we found is they always came back to the assessment. People wanted the assessment. And so by finding out how the world saw my company and how the world saw what I was doing, that they really responded to this one thing, it allowed us to completely double down in that area and make sure that that was a huge priority, and that we set big 6-month goals for upgrading the algorithm and evolving it. We did a huge turnover in January, getting ready for the book launch. And that's why it matters how the world sees you. It's not just your personality. It's what are you putting out there that's getting traction?
Things are changing for me. It's now I'm really starting. I just wrote down, what do they really want from me? What can I really give
them? They don't really want it.
The one thing that sets me apart, that they say they can't get from anyone else, that really is my advantage. What is that one thing? And what I generally see, coming from my experience with the ad agencies and as a media buyer, I also spent a number of years as a sales rep. The conversations I keep on having with Hangout, with professional Hangout producers who are really trying to make their Hangout show grow, is, can you come in and be my sales rep? Or can you teach me how to sell to sponsors? Can you help me get sponsors? Can you help me get audience? And I need to think more about those consistent things that people really want to feel. They really want to feel empowered and capable of easily or clearly knowing how to get sponsors and advertisers supporting them in their Hangouts. And that's what I can bring. I can bring those results.
Results oriented. That's right. So Debbie, I recommend that you do go to part 3 of the book. Go to page 367. And you'll see, here's the exercise I want you to do. It's called your anthem, the tagline for your personality. I think you're going to find this super transformational.
Oh, now, awesome.
I am sorry to say I have to go jump off. I'm sorry to have to leave you, but I've enjoyed talking with you so much.
We've enjoyed having you here so much, Sally. I really appreciate the extra time. I'm sorry we did go over time a little bit, but
that's okay.
Thank you so much for all your time, and thank you everyone for watching us as well. So Sally, if you have to jump off, I'm actually, I've got to end the broadcast as well. Thank you everyone for watching us, and come back again. We'll have not only Sally, Sally's video will be in the library as of today and right away, and we've got more best-selling book authors coming up to share with us their experience, and I'm sure Sally would be happy to have any of you who are watching reach out to her, and certainly through the Google Plus page, if you can, take the Personality Advantage assessment and share with me, please, on my Facebook page or on Google Plus or anywhere. What are your results? What is your personality advantage? So thank you so much, everyone, for watching, and have a great day.